The Modi government in Gujarat has brought a new law over the appointment of Lokayukta. But the opposition says the new provisions may end up making the anti-graft watchdog a toothless paper tiger hostage to the state government. The bill has been passed amidst uproar in the State Assembly, but the Gujarat strongman is facing uncomfortable questions on how an aspirant to the prime ministerial post can seem to be stonewalling an effective Lokayukt and replacing it with a toothless paper tiger.
It's being seen as Narendra Modi's salvo to clip the wings of Governor Kamla Beniwal. Engaged in a protracted battle over the appointment of the anti-graft watchdog, the Modi government brought a new law to appoint the state Lokayukta. And in his bid to upstage the governor, Modi government has given itself sweeping power. The new law seeks to end the Gujarat Chief Justice and Governor's say in appointment and vests all power in a panel headed by the Chief Minister. The law will make it mandatory for the anti-graft watchdog to seek the government nod before acting on any complaint. Crucially, the Lokayukta report will not be binding on the government. The state can even exclude public officials from the anti-graft body's jurisdiction. The proposed law also has provision for a hefty fine and even imprisonment for false complaints and violating secrecy clause. No wonder the opposition is seeing red and accusing the Modi government of trying to reduce the anti-graft watchdog to a paper tiger. The Congress rejected Modi government's assertions that the state must have a say in the appointment of Lokayukta and claims the BJP government is merely shielding the corrupt.
यही बीजेपी का असली चाल चरित्र और चेहरा है। सीएजी की रिपोर्ट है 26,000 करोड़ के गड़बड़ी घोटाले की गुजरात में। नरेंद्र मोदी जी अपने उसी नतीजे से डरते हैं, इसलिए पहले राज्यपाल से लड़ाई लड़ी, उच्च न्यायालय ने कहा, उसके बाद सुप्रीम कोर्ट गए, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कहा कि बिल्कुल ठीक हो रहा है, तो अब एक डरे हुए व्यक्ति की तरह कानून बदलने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं।
It is very clear that all over, especially in the corporate-driven media and the corporates, there is a wholehearted element to trumpet up support for Mr. Narendra Modi.
It was made a multi-member Lokayukta. The Lokayukta had the Nagarpalikas, Mahanagarpalikas and Panchayats brought into it. And importantly, the CM is also brought into the Lokayukta. Does anyone suspect anything more on this? The CM is in the Lokayukta. In the recent Supreme Court decision, the judgment given, the definition of the word governor has been kept in mind while drafting this bill. That the governor will act as per the advice of the cabinet has been kept intact.
The opposition claims that after political and legal setbacks in his battle with Governor Kamla Beniwal, Narendra Modi is trying to make the institution of Lokpal a paper tiger. Questions are being asked if the bid will make the institution toothless against rising cases of graft. The big question here is whether a man who likes to see himself as the future Prime Minister of the country can afford to send out the signal that he's soft on corruption. With Mausiki Acharya in Ahmedabad, Alia Sahani, Headlines Today.
Is this prime ministerial, Mr. Modi, for a man who wants India to believe in his vision, who wants India to back his democratic credentials? Narendra Modi has rammed through, using the sheer brute force of his majority in the Gujarat Assembly, a Lokayukta Bill which renders the new Lokayukta in Gujarat completely toothless. He's made a mockery of the war against corruption. Joining us on the center stage face-off tonight, it's a direct one-on-one clash between Manishankar Iyer representing the Congress party this evening and Meenakshi Lekhi representing the BJP. You know, this whole war against corruption, Meenakshi, has been turned into a farce through the actions of the Gujarat Chief Minister at a time when the Supreme Court has asked the Gujarat government to go ahead with the appointment of the Lokayukta in the state for the state government to completely reverse the project and come up with such a toothless, meaningless Lokayukta. You know, this is not the manner in which a potential Prime Minister of this country should be acting. It's highly autocratic, the Gujarat government's actions, Meenakshi.
Completely the opposite. First, let me tell you that in terms of the Supreme Court order and the judgment, if you go through that, if anyone who has been reprimanded, it's the governor of Gujarat who has been reprimanded very severely by the Supreme Court. In fact, credentials of Mr. Modi have been upheld. So it's reverse of what you're stating. Number two, when you say it is toothless, it is not toothless because it has brought in the office of the chief minister, it has brought in the office of the ministers, all the public sector bodies, including boards, etc., everything. And action for most has to be taken within 6 months. And if anyone who's found to be unfit and to be declared unfit to hold that particular post, that action is mandatorily to be decided within 6 months. And this
No, but you're being very
mandatory
selective in
action
the
of
provisions that
enactment.
you're citing, Meenakshi.
I'm not.
The
I'm
fact
sorry.
is that the Lokayukt
I
will
am
now
not
have
being
to take the
selective.
state government's permission. The Lokayukt will have to take the state government's permission
No.
before he can begin
No,
probing.
no, no, no,
Also,
no, no,
if the
no,
complaint is
no,
found to
no.
be frivolous, a charge will be levied against the
Yes.
complainant. And the state government's permission
Why
will be
should that
required
not
before
happen?
action being taken on the report of the Lokayukt. It's been turned into a farce. You're saying
I'm
that the judge
sorry.
will have to check
No,
with the
it is
accused
not.
whether or not his report has any validity.
Absolutely. You see, there even under the criminal jurisprudence, there is a thing called sanction. And I'm sure you are familiar with it. When you file any complaint against, say, a police officer while performing his duty, etc., the sanction provision exists even today to take the sanction from the concerned authority. It is in that line, and it is not a question of taking permission, including the chief minister has been brought under this particular enactment, and all the high-ups, everyone. And if you're declared unfit, and it can be even a chief minister who's treated at par with the ministers, can be removed from
No,
the
but the
office within
Lokayukt
a
will
period
have to
of 6
seek the
months. Tell me
permission of
which
the chief
state?
minister.
No,
The Lokayukt will have to seek the permission of the chief minister. Should I move ahead with my report?
Okay,
Should action
okay,
be
let me
taken
tell you.
on my report or not? I'm
Let
sorry,
me tell you
let me bring in,
something.
you've
Let
made
me
your
tell you-
opening remarks.
let me tell you
Meenakshi, you've
something.
made your opening
No,
remarks. I want to
but
bring
this
in
is-
Mani
you're-
Shankar Iyer because the
Rahul,
principal
Rahul,
point that you've
Rahul,
made so far,
you're-
Meenakshi, I'm coming back to you.
I have to-
The
I have
principal point that you've made so
Okay,
far
we'll
is
discuss
that
it. You
the
promised you'll
Gujarat
discuss this
government
with
has
me.
enhanced the ambit of the Lokayukt. The purview has been enhanced. Junior level government employees have been brought under the purview of the Lokayukt. Also, the chief minister himself is under the purview of the Lokayukt, and the opposition, that is the Congress party, is being selective in targeting only certain provisions of what Narendra Modi is doing. They are ignoring the bigger picture. Mr. Mani Shankar Iyer.
Well, in order to prepare myself for this program, I read two biographies of Narendra Modi and his autobiography. I'd like to show them to your audience. This is one important biography of Narendra Modi. The other is this, a second biography of Narendra Modi.
That's a
And
biography
his,
of Hitler.
And his autobiography. Everything that Mr. Hitler did was done within the framework of acts. Everything he did was as a result of the first act that he had passed immediately after the burning down of the Reichstag, which gave him the power to do everything. And here we have an example of how, following in the wake of the man whom he resembles the most, except perhaps for the toothbrush moustache, he has decided that he will not do what the law already required, which was the appointment 8 years ago of a Lokayukt under the existing Gujarat Act, but that he'll produce a quite different act in which he will retain to himself the power of deciding whether or not a prosecution is going to take place. He will decide whether a Lokayukt can pick up an issue or not, and he will decide whether that Lokayukt is going to be chucked out or not. I think this is the kind of behavior where there is a patina of legality, but the intentions are completely illegitimate, which characterize the Third Reich that we see unfolding in Gujarat. And I think I long ago decided that the man was completely unfit to run India. But today he has provided definitive proof of his inability to be in charge of a country with as long a democratic tradition and a tradition of constitution and law as we have established in independent India since the 15th of August 1947.
Meenakshi Lekhi, a lot of people doubt Narendra Modi's democratic credentials. They think of him as an autocrat. Manishankar Iyer held up the biography and the autobiography of Adolf Hitler. Now, through his autocratic action today, he's indicated that he's a sore loser. He lost at the Gujarat High Court, he lost at the Supreme Court. Instead of humbly accepting the verdict of the Honorable Supreme Court, he says, no, I will do my own thing. I have brute majority. I will push through the Lokayukta exactly the way I want, regardless of what the Supreme Court might have told me. He is living up to the worst fears of his most staunch critics.
You know, the unfortunate part is there is something called faking images, and I think Mr. Iyer is expert in that. By holding up the autobiography of Adolf Hitler, he's trying to create an image, and unfortunately Headlines Today is participating in perpetuating that myth. This should have been, if he was going to read Hitler's autobiography, he should have read the autobiography of Mrs. Gandhi. That would have been more appropriate, because we have a history of emergency which was imposed by her. And now coming to who is the authority in appointing Lokayukta, it's not the Chief Minister. Let me clear that. He happens to be working on a search committee, and search committee panel also will, and finally the committee will include not just the chairperson or the chairman who's the Chief Minister, but Speaker of Gujarat Assembly.
Who will be from the ruling, party. The minister will be from the ruling party. It is skewed completely in favor of the ruling dispensation. It's favoring Narendra Modi all the way.
I want you to allow me to complete my sentence and not interfere while I'm speaking. It is basic decency and courtesy which you owe to me. And under the scheme of constitution, it has to be the governor is bound by the advice of the Council of Ministers. In this case, the councils of ministers had surrendered their authority before a select panel, which includes the leader of the opposition. So please mind it that while I'm discussing a very important proposition, that who gives up the authority, it would have been far easier for him to allow only Council of Ministers, because if the Council of Ministers was going to decide, it was the party who he represents. But in this case, he has taken the opinion of the people who work on these issues, which means Speaker, the minister nominated by the Council of Ministers,
BJP.
leader of the opposition. In case leader of opposition is not there, then in that case, it will be a person nominated by the opposition. One judge of the High Court of Gujarat to be nominated by the Chief Justice of Gujarat High Court. Now, I'm certain Gujarat High Court or any High Court in the country works more under the central government than under the state government. Vigilance Commissioner, again, not a direct employee of the state government. Selection Committee, while making recommendation, will take into account a proper representation of SCs and STs. And even after this, the multiple body shall include 3 members of the judiciary. 1 will be the Lokayukta, 2 will be the Up-Lokayukta, and 2 will be the administrative members. Now I want to understand which Congress-ruled state has made that kind of proposition where they abide by the decision of the Lokayukta, even imposing it on the Chief Minister. And we have, if he actually wanted to curtail the powers, he should have simply picked up the Delhi Lokayukta Bill and Act and introduced, and Congress would have been made to see a different face.
Let Manishankar Iyer respond to what you're saying. Mr. Iyer.
When Mr. Modi refuses to appoint a Lokayukta for 8 years, 8 years, one wants to ask, how can one trust the intentions of such a man? If he had any belief in the Lokayukta, he could have appointed one under the previous act and allowed a discussion to take place, which would have been a general discussion, which should have allowed civil society to express its views, which should have allowed the opposition to express its views, and which should have allowed his own defenders like Meenakshi Lekhi to speak up for him, produce a well thought out piece of legislation as an alternative to the previous one. But no, He did not want either the previous act or even what he has just now enacted if he could get away with not having a Lokayukt at all. And that is the main charge against him. He is a man who has not established either his credentials as a Democrat or as an honest person with integrity at the heart of his policies. He is a chap who wants just his word to do anything that he wishes to do. And because he's backed by very, very big money, he succeeds in getting away with it, and we have the disgraceful spectacle of industrialists from Bombay coming and holding this chap up exactly like Krupp and Thyssen held up Adolf Hitler. And Adolf Hitler also, having decided that he was going to get rid of Parliament, first got Parliament to pass the Enabling Act under which he ruled for the 12 dreadful years that he ran the place. And I believe, I do not trust the credentials of Mr. Modi. I don't want to look at the fine print of what he has done. What I do want to go back on is his record, which shows he does not believe in this system, and he will do everything he can to sabotage it. If he can't sabotage it, to sabon it.
You've raised an important point. Does the verdict, Meenakshi, of the Supreme Court mean nothing? Why is Narendra Modi so scared of Justice R.A. Mehta, the Lokayukt? The High Court has said that Mr. Mehta should be appointed Lokayukt. The Supreme Court has endorsed that. Why does Narendra Modi not defer to institutions? Like every other chief minister, like every other politician in the country, if the Supreme Court has said something, that should be held sacred. Why is Modi so scared of what the new Lokayukt might do? Why does he want to bring in a pliant Lokayukt and not accept the Lokayukt whose appointment has been endorsed and upheld by the Honorable Supreme Court?
You know, unfortunate part is either Mr. Iyer has not been informed correctly, or Mr. Iyer's deficiency in research I can point out. One is, by this new enactment, Mr. R.A. Mehta's appointment has been ensured, and his tenure
that's
also
not true.
has been
Meenakshi,
ensured.
that's not true. There's a provision
That
over there
is
which
true.
says
I'm
that
sorry.
the age limit
I'm
is
sorry.
72.
That is incorrect.
There is an age limit provision which
Yes,
has been
in
put in. It
spite of
says
that,
there is an age limit provision which is 72. Justice Mehta is already 75. There is a curative petition which is pending before the Supreme Court. These are realities.
Exactly my point.
Modi is trying to ensure, he's doing what he can to ensure that Justice Mehta doesn't become the Lokayukt.
You are painting a colored picture, and let me clarify that in spite of, no, you are not stating the fact, or the understanding is incorrect, because in spite of him being 75 plus, his term is assured, his appointment is assured. The act will come into play only after Mr. R.A. Mehta retires. And please correct yourself when you make that statement. It is for future appointments. The appointment shall be for 5 years or 72, whichever is
So why does he not allow Justice Mehta to take over as Lokayukt? You're not answering the question. Why does he not allow Justice Mehta to take over as Lokayukt?
I am answering you the question, and if you allow me a minute uninterrupted, I'll answer you, and I'll answer what Mr. Iyer has stated. Mr. R.A. Mehta's term is assured in spite of him being above 75 plus right now. It is for future appointments that either 72 or 5 years, whichever is earlier, shall prevail. Mr. Iyer said credentials of Mr. Modi is something he does not trust. It is not for Mr. Iyer, but it is the people of Gujarat who repeatedly vote for him, and he trusts he has earned their trust. The third point which Mr. Iyer raised in his previous brief was about the corporate lobby from Bombay speaking for him. Let me ask Mr. Iyer, or make an address to Mr. Iyer, that I would be very, very interested in knowing whose planes Mrs. Gandhi was traveling in while traveling abroad, and if Mr. Iyer can provide me either officially or on your channel, that will be very graceful.
No, but that's not what
The
we are
second
debating.
thing which
I'm
I wanted
happy to
to say-
set up a debate.
Oh,
Meenakshi,
come on,
these
you're
are just
talking about
derailing
corporate-
tactics.
He
No,
has talked about
Meenakshi, these are
corporate
derailing
lobby.
tactics.
He has
Everyone
talked
watching
about
this
corporate
broadcast can
lobby.
see through
I'm
it.
only making a point.
You are not
Then
answering
you're
the questions.
talking
This is about
appointed.
Justice
No,
Mehta.
I
This
am
is about the
answering you
Governor of
question.
Gujarat.
I am-
This is about the
Of course,
Chief Minister and his actions this afternoon.
Mr. Mehta's tenure is assured and appointed one member, he says, and there should have been he should have appointed the member and then there should have been a discussion. This is exactly what he's doing. Mr. Mehta is appointed the Lokayukta and in his term is assured. He continues for 5 years in spite of being 75 plus. All these things will come subsequently, and so far as this is concerned, that he's undemocratic, he's lord, his honor is not there, he's disgraceful, etc. I think Mr. Iyer should refrain from making such statements because he's a very, very popular chief minister of the country, and I think it doesn't behove him to use these words and this language.
No, a majority does not allow brute action, brute force, where you ram something through, even
I'm
if the
sorry.
Supreme Court has ruled against it. But let me take this argument further, Meenakshi. I want to ask Manishankar Iyer what the BJP should really be asking. They're not raising this question, and I wonder why. The charge is that Justice Mehta is an activist judge, that he in the past has made several pronouncements against the Gujarat government, against Narendra Modi personally, and the governor of Gujarat did not consult the state government and the chief minister when Justice Mehta was appointed Lokayukta. So they say that it is the Congress appointed governor who originally is responsible for circumventing the process and short-circuiting it by not consulting the chief minister when it should have been done in the first place, and therefore Narendra Modi is correct in assuming that Justice Mehta is being put there as a Congress plan to go after him before the general elections. How do you respond to this charge?
Two important points, I think. The first is that if Mr. Modi does believe that Justice Mehta is just a Congress plant, then I'm amazed that he wishes to continue with him until the poor man finishes his term. My second point is that the only reason why the governor was compelled to act was that the government of Gujarat, headed by Chief Minister Modi, was refusing, absolutely refusing, to appoint either Justice Mehta or anybody else as the Lokayukta. For 8 years, Mr. Modi demonstrated that unless he was bullied into it, he was not going to have a Lokayukta. And now, instead of having used the previous 8 years to have passed legislation which suits his whims and fancies, he does this now in this particular context. It's exactly the same as Hitler waiting for the Reichstag fire in order to pass the Enabling Act. And it is this kind of behavior that I think is utterly unacceptable to a democracy where we are institutionalized. This argument about his being the most popular chief minister in Gujarat, in fact, Meenakshi used the curious expression of the country. He's not the chief minister of the country. He's the chief minister of one state of this country. And most of the other states are up in arms with horror at the idea that this man may come and rule from Delhi. The fact of the matter is that Adolf Hitler was also a very popular Reich Chancellor of Germany. He was elected with a huge majority, and he misused that majority. And I believe that Mr. Modi, especially in this particular case, has grossly misused his majority. This is not the way in which a chief minister who is democratic in his instinct should behave. He shows himself to be an autocrat in sheep's clothing.
Meenakshi, the BJP's charge is that Justice Mehta is an activist chief minister. Journalists spoke to him after the government rammed this new bill through, and he said, despite the fact that the Supreme Court had cleared for him to take over, he said, I don't want there to be any controversy. I don't wish to take over. There is a curative petition that is pending in the Supreme Court. Let the Supreme Court clear the air. Only after Modi has exhausted all legal options will I take over. If he were an activist chief minister, as your party alleges. He could have taken over immediately after the High Court order, immediately after the Supreme Court order. He didn't do that. This is not the way in which an activist Lokayukt would act. He would get there, get cracking, start putting out Lokayukt reports. Justice Mehta hasn't done that, so the BJP in some senses is being unfair to the man.
Incorrect. Let me first clarify two things. First, Mr. Iyer said for 8 years Mr. Modi didn't act in appointment of Lokayukt. This is an incorrect statement. In fact, Mr. Modi brought not one but 2-3 names, and it was the governor who was not inclined to put those names and place those people in order. Number two, it was the governor who appointed Mr. Mehta, and it was the leader of opposition who was supposed to participate in the consultation processes, refused to participate, and those are minutes of the meetings which are on record, and this is a government document, and I think this should be put on the net to subside this kind of controversy. Then when you discuss that Mr. Mehta is not an activist and BJP is making an incorrect statement about him, that is as much incorrect, because if you just Google Mr. Mehta's name and you will find that he was very much part of CJP, etc., which is everybody knows, Teesta and others were involved. So we are not incorrect in making an assessment about Mr. Mehta, and there is a lot which Mr. Mehta needs to hide about himself, because the moment he takes over, everything about him will come within the purview, and that is why this 5-member panel, which will take a decision even on Lokayukt's right to hold the office.
No, let's look at some of the specifics, Meenakshi. Let's get into the bill that's been passed. You know, if a complainant has to deposit 2,000 rupees, and if the complaint is found to be frivolous, 25,000 rupees is fine, and you can be jailed up to 6 months. If I suspect that there is corruption, if I'm a common man in Gujarat, why should I pay 2,000 rupees, and why should this threat of me being jailed for up to 6 months hang over my head? It's a complaint. If it's found to be invalid, let it be dismissed. Why send someone to jail? It indicates very suspicious motives in the people who've drafted this bill.
Rahul, the experience in Gujarat has been very, very unfortunate, where people in the skin of social workers have actually been political
But it happens
workers.
with PILs,
And
it happens
where,
with RTIs, it happens everywhere. It's a part of the system. Why send people to jail? You don't get jailed if you file a wrong PIL. You don't get jailed.
If you file a wrong PIL, the court will impose cost. And we've seen cases where a couple of lakhs have been imposed on
But you
people.
don't get sent jail to 6 months. You don't get sent jail to 6 months.
You can be, if there is a criminal contempt of court and you have, by suppressing material, got some order and you are under criminal contempt, one can even be sent to jail.
The criminal contempt is different. Meenakshi, you're a lawyer. But don't confuse our viewers. Criminal contempt is different from a simple PIL, from a simple RTI. If there's an RTI application which has been filed, you can't be jailed for filing a wrong RTI. For filing a wrong RTI question, you can't be jailed.
RTI is different. RTI is very different from making an honest decision to be a corrupt decision.
Mr. Manishankar Iyer, do you think it is fair? Lots of social activists, lots of NGOs file bogus complaints. It happens with RTI, it happens with, it happens with RTI, it happens with several provisions even when the Lokpal comes, and therefore Meenakshi Lekhi argues that it is relevant to have this provision that you will be fined up to 25,000 rupees or jailed for up to 6 months, because there has to be some deterrence. Otherwise, the Lokayukt will be inundated with bogus and frivolous complaints. Mr. Manishankar Iyer.
This is saying that instead of justice being blind, there should be a sword of Damocles hanging over the head of anybody who comes with a complaint. And I do not think this fits into the natural principles of justice. I am not a lawyer, but I am a citizen of this country, and I do not see that I will be fined, threatened with 6 months in prison if I believe, in all honesty, that there is something wrong with the way in which things are being done. And why should a Lokayukt at all be there if you've got a justice system? You have a Lokayukt there precisely because you want the grievances of people to be taken up, and I don't think it is out of solicitousness for the poor Lokayukt being inundated with too many applications that this provision has been put into this rushed legislation. totally rushed and in a particular context. It has been put there in order to say, you try and take me on, mister, and I'll see to it that you go to jail for 6 months. This is precisely the Hitlerian mindset of this man Modi. It'll be a disaster for our country if he comes to Delhi, but fortunately the good people of India are going to ensure that he doesn't.
Meenakshi wants to make a quick interjection before I come to the next point. Meenakshi, go ahead.
You know, the good people of India do reside in Gujarat, and good people of India as Gujaratis have been, he's representing them. So I think good Indians will also make him whatever they decide to. They will not come to Mr. Iyer
Democratic
for
majorities
advice.
do not condone an autocratic
democratic act. I'm sorry,
There is a difference.
it is not autocratic. I dare central government to make a Lokpal on this line. Let the Prime Minister's office come under the office of Lokpal.
They've already accepted that. They've already accepted that the Prime Minister's office will report to the Lokpal. It's already part of the standing committee report. It's already part of what's been passed.
And various other offices. And allow me to complete the kind of findings which Delhi Lokayukt has found against the CM. I want CM to be removed as is in this case.
No, I want to take up, Meenakshi, the next provision of the Lokayukt bill that's been passed. Meenakshi, you must hear me. I want to take up the next provision of the Lokayukt bill that's been passed by Mr. Narendra Modi. This provision says that the Lokayukt will have to submit its report to the state cabinet, which will then have the power to accept or reject it. If the accused are going to play judge and jury, what's the point of having a Lokayukt? This one provision makes the Lokayukt completely toothless and all your claims completely meaningless.
No. Completely incorrect. Completely incorrect, because when a Lokayukt report becomes a documented fact, anybody, and if the council, I'm assuming against myself, that the Council of Ministers refuses to act on a correct complaint, because if they want to reject, they will have to reject with a reason. If they reject or keep it pending, because pending provision is not there,
the people of Gujarat voted us to power. We have the mandate. We have the popular backing. We can reject the report in the same manner in which you refuse to accept a Supreme Court order. You can cite democratic majority as a reason for why a Lokayukt report is not being implemented.
Rahul, you are again, your deficiencies are writ large, because you're not letting me finish. The deficiency is that Lokayukt report by the Council of Ministers has to be decided within the stipulated time. In case it is not decided within the stipulated time, it will be deemed to be correct. Do you understand how difficult and harsh provision that is? That if Council of Ministers refuses to act, if it is rejected, it has to be rejected reasoned order. And if it is an unreasoned order, it can always be challenged. And if it is a reasoned order, the person will have to close his case.
Mr. Manishankar Iyer, Meenakshi says that even if the cabinet wants to reject the order of the Lokayukt, the ministers have to give a reason for why the Lokayukt's report has been rejected. So therefore, there is an adequate provision to ensure that the cabinet does not misuse this provision. Mr. Iyer.
Yeah, they give the same reason that Meenakshi is given. That our chief minister has been elected 3 times, and therefore there's something divine about the manner in which he rules. Who is going to further challenge? I find it comical. I find it comical that people who make the reasoning today are going to be determining the reasoning to be made on the Lokayukt. They're converting the Lokayukt into a kind of subdivisional magistrate. And these are the people who stopped the original Lokpal bill, which included the Lokayukt, from being passed in the Rajya Sabha.
No, but it raises very serious questions, Meenakshi. Why should the state cabinet's approval be required for the Lokayukt bill? The CAG, when it prepares its report, or the CVC, when it prepares its report, doesn't then come to Manmohan Singh and say, this is the report that I have prepared, do you like the report or not? The report is then binding. That's the report of the CAG. That's why Raja went to jail. That's why Kanimodi went to jail. That's why action was taken against Suresh Kalmadi. You don't need to come and take the permission of the man under whose regime these mistakes took place, the malafidis happened in the first place.
No, again incorrect, because the report of the CAG has to be placed before the Parliament.
It has to be placed before the
Parliament
does not. Parliament does not accept or reject. It goes to the PAC. The PAC then has to act on the report. It is not. The cabinet does. There's a difference between it being presented before Parliament. Meenakshi, there's a lacuna in your argument. Presenting the report to Parliament and presenting it for permission to the state cabinet is very different. Let the Lokayukta report be presented before the state assembly.
Raja and Kanimoy.
Meenakshi, you said that the CAG report is presented before Parliament. Meenakshi, you said that the CAG report is presented before Parliament. There is a big difference between a Lokayukta report being presented before the Gujarat Assembly and the Lokayukta report being presented to the state cabinet. The state cabinet will sit in on judgment on whether they like the Lokayukta report or not. That is absolutely a farcical argument.
Have to, of course. You mean to say in state authorities you can reject an elected system? The elected system, the answerability of the authorities have to be to the elected system. And please understand how the CBC appointment.
Let's take this argument further. Let all CAG reports first come to the Manmohan Singh cabinet. No, but let's take this argument further. Meenakshi, are you prepared to accept that all CAG reports first be given to the Manmohan Singh cabinet? No, you're not listening to me. Are you then prepared to accept that let all CAG reports first be presented to the Union cabinet? Let Manmohan Singh, Sharad Pawar, everybody else together decide whether they like the CAG report or not?
No, I'm not saying
but that's what you're saying. If it's okay for the Lokayukta, why is it not okay for the CAG?
No. I'm saying don't allow them to sit over it and decide that within 6 months
but they can reject it, Meenakshi. I'm sorry, you boxed yourself into a corner and now you're trying to get out of it. Let me take this argument further and ask you a very direct question. Extending the Lokayukta example from Gujarat, are you prepared from the second part of the budget session for all CAG reports to be presented to the Manmohan Singh cabinet and let them decide whether what the CAG is reporting against them is right or wrong? Are you prepared to accept that?
I'm sorry, this will be for the government of India to justify, and if they do not accept it within 6 months, it will be deemed to be correct. If there is any, let them have this provision as it is present in the present Lokayukta.
You've made your argument.
Let them have this provision that
Mr. Manishankar Iyer wants to come in with a rejoinder. We've understood. Just because your argument doesn't hold much water, you're constantly saying we are not getting your argument. I'm not sitting in on judgment one way or the other. Our viewers will decide where they stand. Mr. Iyer wants to make a point. He's laughing all the way through.
Well, I'm going to ask Meenakshi to win her seat in the Rajya Sabha by telling Arun Jaitley that in the next second half of the budget session, he should move a private member's bill asking that the CAG report should first be presented to the cabinet and the cabinet should be asked to make up its mind whether to reject it or not within 6 months. Let her please put it in. And Arun Jaitley is the only lawyer I know in India who's slightly better than Meenakshi Lekhi. And as for writing up these reasons, I think Meenakshi has just won herself a job. She'll be the lawyer who'll write up all these reasons for which the decision of the Lokayukta is sat upon by the persons against whom the charges have been made.
Okay.
This is to put the law upon its head. And I think the only precedent I can think of is the Enabling Act of 1933 passed by Adolf Hitler, who his government always acted within the four corners of the German constitution.
I want to now come in the concluding part of this debate to the last question I'm asking tonight, and that is about whether this is the manner in which a aspirant to the post of Prime Minister should really be acting. And I want to put that question first to Manishankar Iyer. Mr. Iyer, do you think this would seriously cloud all those who are sitting in the middle, undecided voters, not those who love him, not those who hate him, but those who are undecided, who are impressed with his development credentials, but now would seriously doubt whether what is said about him being a dictator, about him being an autocrat is actually true, and whether if he were to become Prime Minister in the future, he would uphold democratic institutions, or would he find some way of subverting them using his constitutional majority?
There's a report, there's a book that's just recently been written by the former governor of the Reserve Bank of India, Bimal Jalan, in which he says that the main obstacle to further progress is governance issues. Now, if the governance issues in Gujarat are going to be handled in the manner in which the Lokayukta question has been handled, it throws serious doubts over whether even the Modi model of development, which is extremely anti-poor and extremely anti-tribal, can possibly function in an atmosphere where the government decides whether its actions are corrupt actions or not corrupt actions. And therefore, I never believed, and I don't think our country ever believed, that this man was fit to be the Prime Minister. If he wanted a last nail in the coffin of his ambitions, he has struck that himself.
Meenakshi Lekhi, Narendra Modi has given fodder to all his critics who doubt his democratic credentials, call him an autocrat. This action today really proves all of them to be right. They'll say, here we told you so. He has no faith in democracy. He has no faith in institutions. He will bulldoze institutions, subvert it for his own vested interest. That's what he's done today.
You see, I'll begin with Mr. Iyer making ad hominem arguments against me that I want to win a Rajya Sabha seat. Let me tell that Mr. Iyer is probably trying to get back to his ministerial post, which he has lost. Anyway, whether I come to Rajya Sabha or not, he's already given me that certificate and I would respect him for that. And the second part is that what statement he has made against Modi. On the contrary, Mr. Modi has presented a model where he has challenged the central authorities to bring any act up to the level where they will be subjecting themselves to this particular kind of strictness.
You're trying hard not to answer my question, Meenakshi. You've spoken for 2 minutes, you haven't answered my question.
I'm not.
Does it not show that here's a man who will use his majority to push through what he wants, regardless of what the Supreme Court and the High Court might have said? Answer just this question.
And there is, I am answering that question, that there is something called leadership, there is something called vision, and by this particular enactment, he has shown that a 5-member body in which Chief Justice is going to be involved, 2 judges are going to be involved, 2 administrative people are going to be involved, is going to be an unbiased body where a provision of deemed sanction is also provided for. So I challenge Congress-run governments to bring in, and especially the Delhi Lokayukta.
You haven't still answered my question.
You
still haven't answered my question about the manner in which it was rammed through.
I'm sorry, I'll ask you.
Well, okay.
No, it has not been rammed through. This is the democratic process in which you have, I mean, we have seen how in Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha representation of Women's Act has been stopped. That is the way if you want to dilute.
You've heard from Meenakshi Lekhi, you've heard from Manishankar Iyer. This is a deeply divisive issue. As always, I don't wish to weigh in one way or the other. All of you, our viewers watching tonight, really need to wonder whether Mr. Modi's actions today have been prime ministerial, whether they behove someone who wishes to hold the top post in this country. But one thing is clear and undisputable: parliamentary majority does not behove a mala fide act where brute force is used to go against an order that's been passed against the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court has gone against you, every law-abiding citizen of this country must abide by what the highest court in the land has said. But you must decide where you stand on whether Mr. Modi's actions are prime ministerial or not. But for the time being, Meenakshi Lekhi and Manishankar Iyer for joining us on the center stage face-off tonight. Thank you very much.